In the dark shadows, in the white cold, fearlessly we search for knowledge new and old. We drink the strong spirits and read the ancient tomes. The order of the Abracast. We are the brave and the bold.
Get organized. Get organized in order to no longer have to work. We know the individuals are possessed of so little life that they have to earn a living, to sell their time in exchange for a modicum of social existence, personal time for social existence. Such is work, such is the market. From the outset, the time of the commune eludes work. It does not function according to that scheme. It offers others. Groups of Argentine picaderos collectively extort a sort of local welfare, conditioned by a few hours of work. They don't clock their hours. They put their benefits in a common acquire, clothing, workshop, a bakery, putting in place the gardens that they need. The commune needs money, but not because we need to earn a living. All communes have their black markets. There are plenty of hustles. Aside from welfare, there are various benefits, disability money, accumulated student aid, subsidies drawn off fictitious childbirths, all kinds of trafficking, and so many other means that arise with every mutation of control. It is not for us to defend them or to install ourselves in these temporary shelters or to preserve them as a privilege for those in the know. More important thing is to cultivate and to spread this necessary disposition towards fraud and to share its innovations. For communes, the question of work is only posed in relation to other already existing incomes. And we shouldn't forget all the useful knowledge that can be acquired through certain trades, professions, and well-positioned jobs. The exigency of the commune is to free up the most time for the most people. And we're not just talking about the number of hours free from any wage labor exploitation. Liberated time doesn't mean a vacation, vacant time, dead time, the time of emptiness and the fear of emptiness. This is the time of work. There will be more time to fill, but a liberation of energy that no time contains, lines that take shape, that accentuate each other, that we can follow at our leisure to their ends until we see them cross with others.
The Abracast, occult, history, conspiracy, and violence.
Recording from the prologue of 1984 in Quarantine Zone 3 in the People's Republic of Pennsylvania. I am John Towers, and this is the Abracast. So, truth be told, the last Coming Insurrection episode I did, at the end when I was like, I'm not fucking reading from this book again, fuck this book. As I was saying that, I was flipping through what I was leaving on the table at the end here, and I was like, oh, like this is the important this is a lot of the important stuff is back here. So basically, just as fast as I said I'm never doing another Coming Insurrection book or episode, I knew I was lying. But I put the book down for a few days and I was like, how do I feel about leaving this stuff out of our examination of this book? And I was like, you know me. I'm sure you know me. If you've listened to the show long enough, you know I'm a completist. So I was like, if it was just bullshit back here, but a lot of the stuff here in the back of the book is the important stuff. And it's also the stuff that's relative, because it kind of takes the manifesto kind of part of it away, and it kind of grounds itself. And we could kind of see, especially looking back just to what happened to Seattle this last few weeks or months, wherever there's this business. I think we might even talk a little bit about the ripping the statues and stuff down too. This is kind of where the metal meets the road, the rubber meets the road here in the back of the book. So I thought about it for a few days and I was just like, oh, fuck that Invisible Committee and fuck this book. It's fucking poison. But the completist in me was like, you got to pick the fucking book back up and you got to do this one last thing. So I thought that we would just do it and get out of the way. We put in the feature topic link and be done with this fucking poisonous blue book. But we can see here right from this cold open, it's the first portion of the chapter, I guess, the section called Get Organized. And you can kind of hear what I'm talking about like we're starting to talk about the practicality of what the rest of this book meant, right? So I thought that I would get right into this. So there's just a quick reminder about, consider signing into the newsletter, consider becoming a Patreon supporter. Our Patreon episode this month is it's the fourth of the Atlantis episodes we're doing. So we're kind of doing 40 and stuff over in the Fellowcraft episodes. We did Bigfoot and we did the UFOs and we did sea monsters. That was fun. We're starting a new thing off next month. I don't want to talk too much about it, but yeah. So this is the last of the Atlantis episodes. It's interesting. It's like Atlantis, examples of Atlantis and other in the Bible, actually, in other ancient traditions. It's cool. So yeah, let's get into this anarcho-communist fucking bullshit. So if you have whatever you're drinking on, whatever you're working on this evening, whatever glass you're working through, your favorite weapon of mass distraction, raise your glass to the air and thank our Patreon, and thank our Subscribe Star supporters for helping our little podcast along. Thank you guys. Without your help, we couldn't do this. Okay. Plunder, cultivate, fabricate. Some former Metal Europe employees became bank robbers rather than prison guards. Some EDF employees show friends and family how to rig the electricity meters. Commodities that fell off the back of the truck are sold left and right. In a world that so openly proclaims its cynicism, can't expect much loyalty from the proletarians. On the one hand, a commune can't bank on the welfare state being around forever. And I mean, literally, what? And on the other, it can't count on living for long off shoplifting, nighttime dumpster diving at supermarkets, or in the warehouses of the industrial zones, misdirecting government subsidies, ripping off insurance companies, and other frauds. In a word, plunder. So it has to consider how to continually increase the level and the scope of self-organization. Nothing would be more logical than using the lathes, milling machines, and photocopiers sold at a discount after a factory closure to support a conspiracy against commodity society. The feeling of imminent collapse is everywhere, so strong these days that it would be hard to enumerate all of the current experiments in matters of construction, energy, materials, illegality or architecture, agriculture. They're a whole set of skills and techniques just waiting to be plundered and ripped from their humanistic street culture or eco-friendly trappings. Yet this group of experiments is but one part of all of the institutions, the know-how and the ingenuity found in slums that will have to be deployed if we intend to repopulate the metropolitan desert, to ensure the viability of an insurrection beyond its first stages. How will we communicate and move about during the total interruption of the flows? How will we restore food production in rural areas to the point where they can once again support the population density that they had 60 years ago? And how will we transform concrete spaces into urban vegetable gardens, as Cuba had done in order to withstand both American embargo and the liquidation of the USSR? Training and learning. What are we left with, having used up most of the leisure authorized by the market democracy? What was it that made us go jogging on Sunday mornings? What keeps all these karate fanatics, these DIY fishing or mycology freaks going? What if not the need to fill up some totally idle time, to reconstitute their labor power or their health capital? Most recreational activities would easily be stripped of their absurdity and become something else. Boxing has not always been limited to the staging of spectacle matches. At the beginning of the 20th century, as China was carved up by hordes of colonists and starved by long droughts, hundreds of thousands of its poor peasants organized themselves into countless open-air boxing clubs. There was a boxer revolution back then. In the order to take back what the colonists and the rich had taken from them, this was the Boxer Rebellion. The Boxer Rebellion. I read a comic book about it once. That's all I know about it. It's never too early to learn and to practice what less pacified, less predictable times might require of us. Our dependence on the metropolis, on its medicine, its agriculture, its police is so great at present that we can't attack it without putting ourselves in danger. An unspoken awareness of this vulnerability accounts for the spontaneous self-limitation of today's social movements and explains our fears of crises and our desire for security. It's for this reason that strikes have usually traded the prospect of revolution for a return to normalcy. I have some shit to say about this, actually. Hold on, I gotta make a quick note here. Escaping this fate calls for a long and consistent process of apprenticeship and for multiple massive experiments. It's a question of knowing how to fight, to pick locks, to set broken bones, to treat sickness, to build a pirate radio transmitter, how to set up street kitchens, how to aim straight, how to gather together scattered knowledge and set up wartime agronometics. I don't know what that means. Agriculture, I guess. Some agroeconomics, maybe. Understood plankton biology, soil composition, study the way plants interact, get to know possible uses for and connections with our immediate environment, as well as the limits we can't go beyond without exhausting it. We must start today in preparation for the days when we'll need more than just a symbolic portion of our nourishment and care. So the things that I popped into my brain as I was reading this is Fight Club. I wonder if there is a correlation between Fight Club and the Boxer Rebellion. It's interesting. If I was the kind of guy to Google in the middle of recording a podcast, I might check that out for myself, but I'm not. The other thing that I want to talk about is this cries and our desires for security. It's for this reason that strikes have usually traded the prospect of revolution for return to normalcy. I think that that's something that's going on with us. I think going forward, this idea of health security, or maybe they'll call it something different. I've heard the term biosecurity. And I believe this, well, I guess I want to say it started with Obamacare, but it actually goes back farther than that here in the U.S. There was Hillary Care back in the 90s when she totally fucked that up. Yeah, like healthcare is a right. Healthcare is a right. We hear that everywhere. Healthcare is a human right. It's never been looked at like that until this generation, maybe the last generation. I don't think Generation Xers initially thought like that. They were just like, fuck, man, I guess when I smoke too much cigarettes, I'll die. And I'll thank Newport for it. But this thing about our desire for security and this buckling under for a return for normalcy is something that should be on our list as we're doing while we're dissecting media and looking at messaging. I think this is it. I think this is going to be the future. It's going to be about, they're going to do great things because of how you fear for your health. I mean, I'm not the kind of motherfucker to make predictions either, but yeah. So that's it. I'm learning a lot about myself today. I'm not the kind of guy to make predictions. I made one prediction once, and it didn't work out very well for me. And I'm also not the kind of guy to Google while I'm trying to talk to you. I don't Google while I'm talking to you guys. That's for sure. Create territories. Multiply zones of opacity. More and more reformists today agree that the approach of peak oil in the order to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, we will need to relocalize the economy, encourage regional supply lines and small distribution circuits, renounce easy access to imports far away, etc. What they forget is that what characterizes everything that's done in a local economy is that it's done under the table in an informal way. This simple ecological measure of relocation the economy or relocalizing the economy implies nothing less than total freedom from state control, or else total submission to it. Today's territory is the product of many centuries of police operations having been pushed out of the fields and then their streets and then their neighborhoods and finally from the hallways of their buildings, in the demented hope of containing all life between four sweating walls of privacy. The territorial question isn't the same for us as it is for the state. For us, it's not about possessing territory. Rather, it is a matter of increasing the density of the communes, of circulation, of the solidarities to the point that the territory becomes unreadable, opaque to all authority. We don't want to occupy the territory. We want to be the territory. Every practice brings a territory into existence, a dealing territory or a hunting territory, a territory of child's play, of lovers, of a riot, a territory of farmers and ornithologists, ornithologists. The rule is simple. The more territories there are superimposed on a given zone, the more circulation there is between them. The harder it will be for power to get a handle on them. Bristow's print shops, sports facilities, wastelands, secondhand bookstalls, building rooftops, improvised street markets, kebab shops, and garages can all easily be used for purposes other than their official ones if enough complexities come together in them. Local self-organization superimposes its own geography over the state cartography, scrambling and blurring it. It produces its own succession. Travel, open your own lines of communication. The principles of communes is not to counter the metropolis. It is not mobility with local slowness and rootedness. The expansive movement of commune formation should be surreptitiously overtake the movement of the metropolis. We don't have to reject the possibilities of travel and communication that the commercial infrastructure offers. We just have to know their limits. We have to be prudent, innocuous. Visits in person are more secure. They leave no trace and forge much more consistent connections than any lists of contacts on the internet. The privilege many of us enjoy of being able to circulate freely from one end of the continent to the other, and even cross the world without too much trouble, is not negligible. It's not a negligible asset when it comes to communication between pockets of conspiracy. One of the charms of this metropolis is that it allows Americans, Greeks, Mexicans, and Germans to meet and cook for each other. To meet fervently in Paris for the time it takes to discuss strategy. See, he's literally this committee. They keep referring to France, and every once in a while they'll throw some shade at the U.S. or whatever, but it's the context. He's talking about a global movement, which we're seeing. We're seeing this global movement. We got people in London, protesting and rioting over George Floyd. You're like, it's a head scratcher. You're like, what? Everywhere. Probably in Greece, probably in Mexico, probably in Germany. For they met at Paris a long time ago to talk about this, apparently. Constant movement between friendly communes is one of the things that keeps them from drying up and from the inevitability of abandonment. Welcoming comrades, keeping abreast of their initiatives, reflecting on their experiences, and making use of new techniques they've developed. It does more good for a commune than a sterile self-examination behind closed doors. It would be a mistake to underestimate how much they can be decisively worked out over the course of evenings spent comparing views on the war and the progress. Remove all obstacles one by one. It's well known that the streets teem with incivilities between what they are and what they should be. Stand a centripetal force of the police doing their best to restore order to them. And on the other side, there's us, the opposite centrifugal movement. We can't help but delight in the fits of anger and disorder wherever they erupt. I mean, Jesus Christ. We can't help but to delight in the fits of anger and disorder wherever they erupt. It is not surprising that these national festivities national festivals. Sorry, I was trying to put my pen back down. National festivals that aren't really celebrating anything anymore are now systematically going bad, whether sparkling or dilapidated, the urban fixtures. But where do they begin? Where do they end? Embody our common dispossession, preserving in their nothingness. They ask for nothing more than to turn to that state for good. Take a look at what surrounds us. All this will have its final hour. The metropolis suddenly takes on an air of nostalgia, like a field of ruins. All the incivilities of the street should become methodical, a systematic converging in a diffuse, effective guerrilla war that restores us to our ungovernability, our primordial unruliness. It's disconcerting to some that this same lack of discipline figures so prominently among the recognized military virtues of resistance fighters. In fact, though, range and politics should never have been separated. Without the first, the second is lost in discourse. Without the second, the first exhausts itself in howls. When words like enrages and exalts resurface in politics, they are always greeted with warning shots. As for methods, let's adopt the following principle from sabotage: a minimum of risk in taking the actions, a minimum of time, a maximum of damage. As for, like, all right, someone's read Sun Tzu, and I brought a gun too, so you'll never come too. As for strategy, we will remember that an obstacle that has been cleared away, leaving a liberated but uninhabited space, is easily replaced by another obstacle, one that offers more resistance and is harder to attack. I spent a couple of years of my life as a combat engineer in the U.S. Army, and removing obstacles was my jam at one point in time. No need to dwell too long on the three types of worker sabotage: reducing the speed of work from easy does it, pacing, to the work to rule, strike, breaking the machines or hindering their functions and divulging company secrets, broadening to the dimensions of the whole social factory. The principles of sabotage can be applied to both production and circulation. The technical infrastructure of the metropolis is vulnerable. It flows amount to more than the transportation of people and commodities, information and energy, circulative via wire networks, fibers, and channels. And these can be attacked nowadays, sabotaging the social machine with any real effect involves reappropriating and reinventing the ways of interrupting its networks. It's curious here that it's curious to me, anyways, that they're not talking about roads. I haven't heard them talk about, like, the classic is taking down bridges to limit or control the way your enemy moves. How can a TGV line or an electrical network be rendered useless? How does one find the weak points in a computer network or scramble radio waves and fill screens with white noise? As for serious obstacles, it is wrong to imagine them invulnerable to all destruction. The Promethean element in all of this boils down to a certain use of fire. All blind volunteerism aside, in 356 BC, Erostratus burned down the Temple of Artemis, one of the seven wonders of the world. In our time of utter decadence, the only thing imposing about temple is the dismal truth that they are already in ruins. Annihilating this nothingness is hardly a sad task. It gives action a fresh demeanor. Everything suddenly coalesces and makes sense. Space, time, friendship. We must use all means at our disposal and rethink their use. We ourselves being means, as in means to an end. Perhaps in the misery of the present, fucking it all up will serve not without a reason as the last collective seduction. I made it this far. I think I said it a couple times in this episode, but I don't think I said it in other episodes. I might have hinted at it though, perhaps. This book is poison. It is poison. And I'm sure there's some of you out. I've gotten emails that kind of come, I don't want to say dangerously close, but it comes pretty close to being like, why do you give a fuck so much about this book? Or, you're railing on communism. It's actually a big detriment to me because a lot of times, I should say this. Actually, I'm not even going to say anything about it. But, when I'm probably older than a lot of you. And when I went to do my service, when I went to the Army, you make an oath I enlisted. So there's two different oaths, right? There's an oath of commissioned officers, and then there's an oath of enlistment. And they're subtly different for many reasons or whatever. But when I did my oath, I didn't give a shit about it. I just wanted to go and, see the world and get college money and do all of that stuff. And then in basic training, this was the end of the Cold War was the time I was in there, right? So we still were doing, what makes the green grass grow, it was this stuff. And then, I had listened to communists my whole life. I just didn't know it. It was my dad. Only in the last 20 years or so has he finally admitted that he doesn't say communist. He's socialist, democratic socialist, utopian. I'm a utopian, this nonsense. But I've been listening to this my whole life. And I've talked before one or two times on the show that one conversation that happened in a parking lot in Washington State flipped my whole fucking world around. And that's what made me start paying attention to, these politics or whatever. So, and I realized that this communism is the worst thing. Terrorism really was shitty for a while there, but I never kind of took my eye off of this communist stuff. And, you could go back and listen to those, the American Sermon episodes, the one that I did on Bradford's Journal, the one with the pilgrims in Bradford's Journal. And I feel like there was some real impassioned me talking about this kind of stuff, and talking about these fact check websites that totally flip around what the actual book says. I had the book, I was reading it right to you guys. And it's the first thing the fucking pilgrims did when they hit this land is they became a commune. And after the first winter, they were like, yo, we got to figure out a better way because this shit's not working. And I get into depth about it. And I think it's this kind of thing, as long as, we have this shell of sort of free speech, which is very important to me, and the freedom of religion. And I say a lot of awful things about some religions sometimes, but that shit is important. It's like, the DC Comics heroes, they all have their opposite number. So it's the Hall of Justice with Batman and Superman and Wonder Woman and Aquaman. There's always the Hall of Doom, with the assembled supervillains, and it's Lex Luthor and the Joker and the cheetah and black mana. You know, this, the way this country is set up is it's cooler than every other place, which brings the worst out in a lot of places. And it's dude. We are infested by it. So I'm going to take a break here. I'm sorry for railing. You know, I'm going to do something. I'm going to do something after the show. So after the final like little spiels and all this stuff, stick in there, and we're gonna do the oath of enlistment. I'm gonna do the oath of enlistment with everybody. If you're interested in it, hang tight.
Learn more at abracast.com. Get bonus content by signing up for the mailing list. Get all that plus many exclusive episodes by supporting the show at patreon.com or subscribestar.com.
I pay much more attention to that oath that I made in 1992 now than I ever did when I actually made it. So I hope you stick with me. We'll do it. We'll do the oath together. We'll do the oath of enlistment together. And maybe we'll talk a little bit about what it means. But back to this poison bullshit. Flee visibility and turn anonymity into an offensive position. In demonstration, a union member tears the mask off an anonymous person who has just broken a window. Take responsibility for what you are doing instead of hiding yourselves. But to be visible is to be exposed. That is to say, above all, vulnerable. When leftists everywhere continually make their cause more visible, whether that of the homeless, of women, of undocumented immigrants, in hopes that it will get dealt with, they are doing exactly the contrary of what must be done. Not making ourselves visible, but instead turning the anonymity to which I'm having a problem, to which we have been regulated to our advantage, and through conspiracy, nocturnal or faceless actions, creating an invulnerable position of attack. The fires of November 2005 offer a model for this. No leaders, no demands, no organization, but words, gestures, complexities. To be socially nothing is not a humiliating condition. The source of some tragic lack of recognition. From whom do we seek recognition? But it is on the contrary of the condition for maximum freedom of action, not claiming your illegal actions, only attaching them to some fictional acronym. We still remember the ephemeral BAFT, the Brigade of Anti-Felic Dictateurs, as a way to preserve that freedom. Quite obviously, one of the regime's first defensive maneuvers was the creation of the Banlieue subject, which was being treated as the author of the riots of November 2005. Just looking at these faces on some of the somebodies illustrates why there's such joy in being a nobody. Visibility must be avoided, but a force that gathers in the shadows can't avoid it forever. Our appearance as a force must be reserved for the opportune moment. The longer we avoid visibility, the stronger we'll be when it catches up with us. And once we become visible, and our days will be numbered, either we will be in position to break its hold in short order, or we'll be crushed in no time. So, I mean, it seems obvious to me, but this is the V for Vendetta, the Guy Fawkes masks of Anonymous and Occupy, and the black blocking, like the black bloc uniform that Trevor Loudon told us about. Organize self-defense. Organize self-defense. We live under an occupation, under a police occupation. Undocumented immigrants are rounded up in the middle of the streets. Unmarked police cars patrol the boulevards. Metropolitan districts are pacified with techniques forged in the colonies. The Minister of Interior makes declarations of war on gangs that remind us of the Algerian War. We are reminded of it every day. These are reasons enough to no longer let ourselves be beaten down. Reasons enough to organize our self-defense. Now, this is interesting because my Facebook feed has been taken over by like video ads for ninja weapons. And you're like, what? And I'm like, no, I'm serious. Like, I have like ads for these spring-loaded staffs that pop up and like batons that like the people are like breaking rocks and bricks with, and they're like a truck runs over one of them to show how strong it is, and like these wire whips, and they put a piece of like chicken breast on the ground and they fucking snap it with this whip and it just cuts it like cleanly in half. And that shit is no joke, man. When I was in the Army, I seen a guy get beat with a whip antenna for a prick radio, and it was devastating. Anyhow, what was I talking about? Oh, yeah. So, it's crazy that this is in here, like organizing their self-defense. And another thing is, like, I get, like, the Wish ads that come across Facebook feeds, and there's always, like, black body armor. It looks like they're fucking selling, like, like fucking Kmart Batman's fucking body armor, and then you look at the Antifa and stuff and you're like, oh, that's who's buying all this stuff. They're selling them lethal weapons. So that's something to think about, you Second Amendment people. I just assumed everybody was getting those. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's just me. Maybe they're targeting me. Maybe they're trying to radicalize old Johnny X. And by the way, if you come at me like Donatello, the Ninja Turtle with a fucking bow staff, someone's going to have a long day. I'm not even saying I'm going to shoot anybody. That's not what I'm saying. But I'm going to fucking take that bow staff and I'm going to turn you into a fucking finger puppet. A fucking bow staff. Okay, I gotta get back. I'm starting to have a little too much fun. Fucking bow staffs. Oh, God. What the fuck is going on? To the extent that it grows and radiates, a commune begins to see the operations of power target that which constitutes it. These counterattacks take the form of seduction, of recuperation, and as a last resort, brute force. For a commune, self-defense must be a collective fact as much as a practical and theoretical. Remember what they did in Chaz before it was chopped? Before Chaz was chopped, the first thing they did when they took it over was they started arming people to do the self-defense business. Like the fucking Invisible College told them. Preventing an arrest, gathering quickly and in large numbers against eviction attempts, and sheltering one of our own will not be superfluous reflexes in coming times. We cannot ceaselessly reconstruct our bases from scratch. Let's stop denouncing repression and instead prepare to confront it. It's not a simple affair, for we expect a surge in the police work being done by the population itself. Everything from snitching to occasional participation in citizens' militias. The police forces bend in with the crowd. The ubiquitous model of police intervention even in riot situations, is now the cop in civilian clothes. The effectiveness of the police during the last anti-CPE demonstration was a result of plainclothes officers mixing among us and waiting for an incident before revealing who they were. Gas, nightsticks, tasers, detainment, all in strict coordination with the demonstration stewards. The mere possibility of their presence was enough to create suspicion amongst the demonstrators. Who's who? And to paralyze action. If we agree that the demonstration is not merely a way to stand and be counted, but a means of action, we have to equip ourselves with better resources to unmask plainclothes officers, chase them off, and if need be, snatch back those they are trying to arrest. I'm surprised they stopped there. The police are not invincible in the streets. They simply have the means to organize, train, and continually test new weapons. Our weapons, on the other hand, are always rudimentary, cobbled together, and often improvised on the spot. Ours is spring-loaded like a Ninja Turtle weapon. Ours certainly can't hope to match theirs in firepower, but it can be used to hold them at a distance and redirect attention, exercise psychological pressure, or force passage and gain ground by surprise. None of the innovations in urban guerrilla warfare that are being taught in the French police academies are adequate to respond rapidly to moving multiplicity that can strike a number of places at once, and that tries to always keep the initiative. Communes are obviously vulnerable to surveillance and police investigations and policing technologies and intelligence gathering. The ways of arrest of anarchists in Italy and eco-warriors in the USA are made possible by wiretapping. Everyone is detained by the police now, has his or her DNA sample added to an ever more complete profile. A squatter from Barcelona is caught because he left fingerprints on flyers he was distributing. Tracking methods are becoming better and better, most through biometric techniques. And if the distribution of electronic identity cards are instituted, our task will be that much more difficult. The Paris Commune found a partial solution to keeping records. They burned down City Hall, destroyed all the public records and the vital statistics, and still need to find the means to permanently destroy computerized databases. Like Tyler Durden did. I'm John. This is the Advertise. The show is officially over, but wait around till the end. We're going to do the Oath of Enlistment. I'm going to administer the Oath of Enlistment. Hey, be careful, have fun. I hope everybody's safe, and I'll see you in a few days.
Thank you for listening to this episode. Send an email or visit us on social media to let us know what you think about this topic. And please remember to leave a 5-star rate and review.
Hey, did you learn something? Did you laugh? Supporting me is a way for you to be a part of the Advercast and ensure its growth and sustainability. It also means I can create a normal schedule for shows and bonus shows, as well as the exclusive Fellowcraft episodes. By supporting the show, you are not only a listener, but you are a part of the show. You supporting the show gives me a way to offer fun rewards as a thank you for showing your appreciation and support for our projects. Do you have an idea for a reward that you don't see? Let me know. My supporters are my partners. I currently pay for you to listen to the Advercast. Not only do I pay the hosting bills out of my own pocket, I volunteer my time and talent to each and every episode of the Advercast. the price of books, the time and resources of reading and researching, the massive amounts of gin and tonic needed, the equipment it takes to record the shows, the time and resources it takes to create the bonus material, and the cost to maintain the internet presence. Is it worth your support? I don't know. I'm proud of the Abercast, and I feel like I'm improving all the time. In addition to creating the show that you dig and that you are excited about, I also have a full-time commitment and other obligations. So why financial support? All of the supporters help me focus my time on the quality and development of the podcast. And what if you can't afford, $1 or $3 or $10 or whatever a month? Believe me, I get that. There are many degrees of support, but if you can't support the show financially, please consider leaving a 5-star rate and review on your preferred podcast app. And don't forget that you could sign into the mailing list and still unlock a lot of bonus content. Thank you. I cannot put into words how much it means to me that you listen to the show each time I post a new episode. Your feedback, support, and love of the stories that we talk about here is what keeps me going. Okay, a few notes about this oath of enlistment here. At the very beginning, it says, I blank, do solemnly swear. If you've already done the oath, you don't say, I do solemnly swear. You say, I do solemnly affirm. Okay? So I'm not going to call that out when we do it. I just want to let you know. And when I say state your name, this isn't a fucking Looney Tunes cartoon. So you state your name. Or this isn't fucking Animal House. And I know that I do have a lot of vets that listen to this, I'm in contact with quite a few of them. So just want to let everybody know I'm not doing this in jest. I'm actually talking about this oath. I'm actually talking about the oath. It's in perpetuity. There is no time limit on the oath. So these things that you swore to do in the 80s, in the fucking 90s, whenever, you packed it up and you raised your hand and you were looking at that flag. These things are still, you still owe these things. And in this time, in this fucking day and age, this is important. Let's do it. This is the oath of enlistment. I, state your name, do solemnly swear that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic, and that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same, and that I will obey the orders of the President of the United States and the orders of the officers appointed over me, according to the regulations of the Uniform Code of Military Justice. So help me God.